dear Michael, you're a beautiful spirit, my dear friend, and you certainly have been working very hard in this lifetime to really find a place for yourself. Certainly because you have so many different ideas, so much creativity, so many ways of responding to the world, and sometimes you say, well, which one of these is me? Well, my dear friend, it's all you. You have decided in this lifetime to be a rather diversified person, and so sometimes it feels rather silly to you to be on the earth because you don't really know where you fit. But you have a lot of interesting qualities about you, my dear friend, and what we would suggest is that you start to study the fact that you did indeed come from the stars and that you do indeed have this connection to the heavens. God bless you indeed. That is unusual for most human beings on the earth. You do have a connection and a relationship to such creatures that would be known as extraterrestrials, but really these are celestial beings, not necessarily the sorts that you would see in the movies, the scary kind you see as the aliens, but celestial beings, really, my dear friend, where you lived for so very, very many years, centuries, if you will, if in terms of the earth world, and at long last you decided to come here to the planet Earth to play, to discover what this place is all about and see what all the fuss is about this beautiful blue orb that is in the universe.
Yeah, so what would be the greatest way that I could experience this unlimitedness that I pray about every day?
Just enjoy it, my dear friend. You see, you can't put it in a bottle, and you can't give it a name. Ultimately, part of the plan as you grow into greater and greater love is as you are on a quest for love. Suddenly, you become that, and no longer are you seeking it, but you're just the full expression of it.
Welcome to the I Bring Water Show, guys. I am your host, Michael Mason. It's lovely to have you guys back here for another episode. This show's only getting better and better, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue to create this this dynamic, relationship with you guys, and this atmosphere of personal growth and storytelling, and and education and kindness and love. And our potential really to co-create a reality here on Earth that is better than we ever imagined possible. I truly believe that we can create a level of heaven on Earth on this planet. Not a place of perfection, but a place where human beings are truly committed to work. They're committed to getting their hands in the dirt of life and love. They're committed to tremendous transparency and tremendous vulnerability and tremendous teamwork, so that we can step into this integral way of living and being in relationship with our spirit and in relationship with this beautiful planet that needs us, now more than ever, in terms of this modern industrialized civilization, and really in so many ways how spoiled we've become. We have a tremendous opportunity to come together on this planet and to create sustainable solutions that support not just Mother Earth, but support the masses, that support the homeless, that support war-torn nations, that support, the quality of life of all human beings on this planet. And that's the thing about life, is that when there is no more quality of life, plants and animals, they cease to exist. And the same holds true with human beings. When our quality of life is diminished in such a way, we find a way out of this physical reality. We find a way out of this physical life through disease, through accidents, through, whatever means. Suicide, unfortunately, is really a very sad reality for a lot of folks who are struggling with their mental and emotional health. So, I'm not sure why I started with this intro for EP4, The Language of the Universe with Astrologer Wayne, which is a very beautiful conversation that I want to lead into here. And so that's really it. Astrology is something that, interests me deeply in my life. It's not something that I gave much credence to before my awakening that began in early 2013. But through my own transformation, I've found that astrology has a tremendous opportunity to help us move deeper into a greater relationship and understanding with who we are, and more specifically, what we're here to do in this individual incarnation. And so with that, there's an excerpt from one of my favorite books, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, who I believe came from India in the maybe around 1920 to Boston, and his job was to help create a relationship between Hinduism and Christianity, and he did such wonderful and amazing work on this planet and created this self-realization fellowship. And so on page 182 of his autobiography, it reads, astrology is the study of man's responses to planetary stimuli. The stars have no conscious benevolence or animosity. They merely send forth positive and negative radiations. Of themselves, they do not help or harm humanity, but offer a lawful channel for the outward operation of cause and effect equilibriums that each man sets into motion in the past. A child is born on the day and the hour when the celestial rays are in mathematical harmony with his individual karma. His horoscope is a changing portrait revealing this unalterable past and its probable future results. But the natal chart can be rightly interpreted only by men of intuitive wisdom. These are few. The message boldly blazoned across the heavens at the moment of birth is not meant to emphasize fate, the result of past good or evil, but to arouse man's will to escape from his universal thraldom. What he has done, he can undo. None other than himself is the instigator of the causes of whatever effects are now present or now prevalent in his life. He can overcome any limitation because he created it by his own actions in the first place, and because he possesses spiritual resources that are not subject to planetary pressure. All right, today we have a special guest, Bruce Wayne. He's a astrologer and psychic on our program. So I'd appreciate you being on the program, sir.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. And just to be clear, I mean, Bruce Wayne is that's one of my handles, but I'm mostly known as Psychic Wayne. Okay, so I'm Bruce Wayne and Psychic Wayne for those who have heard of both. So
okay, yeah, absolutely, awesome. So I'm curious a little bit about you in terms of like your early history and how you got became interested in astrology or just how that kind of that relationship, how did that develop like in the early years of your life or whatever point it was?
Well, actually, I started out reading tarot. I've been reading tarot since I was a teen, actually. I guess I was in college, actually. And I went to, my friend said, oh, this guy does astrology charts, whatever. So I was like, okay, fine. So I gave him my birth time and all of my information, and he actually put the chart together. And first thing he said to me was like, oh, you're going to be doing something similar to what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, at the time, I already knew about the tarot, which is something similar to astrology. But, I was in college and I wanted to be a reporter. So I'm like, I don't know about that. But from my teenage years till over 20 years, I was reading tarot. So a producer approached me here in LA. He's like, oh, we want to do some kind of psychic show. I'm like, yeah, okay. So he goes, well, I don't know how the cards will work, because I was a tarot reader. And this must have been about 2009, 2010. So he said, well, do you know astrology? I was like, well, no, I'm not really versed in astrology. And he said, well, that will work out better because more people are more, they understand that better. They're more familiar with that. Then a few weeks later, I started to study astrology. I've never stopped ever since then. So that's kind of happened.
Wow. So it wasn't so much, and maybe it's kind of my assumption, but it wasn't so much necessarily in the earlier days of your life, but it was just something that evolved over time, I'm guessing, then obviously the way it sounds. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I've been studying it since, I guess, 2010, 2011, something like that. But yeah, the point is I've always had an interest in things associated with tarot and the zodiac, but I never really, really studied it until then. And that kind of pushed me to study it,
Right. I understand. Yeah. Well, that's awesome too. And you are amazing at what you do. It's obviously,
I appreciate that.
So yeah, in terms of like, if you could kind of give some of the basics to the listeners here. I mean, I'm curious to kind of learn about how we could share, information about the planets and some of their general characteristics and things like that, and then maybe how they're associated with houses. Was that something you'd be interested in sharing?
Wow, that's a lot.
I know. Could we simplify like a little bit, like just in terms of like each of the planets, like kind of what their general characteristics are?
Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, the first zodiac sign is Aries. A lot of people don't know. They just say, "Oh, I'm a Pisces." There's 12 signs, and they go 1 through 12. So we start with Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Aries is the natural ruler of our ascendant. It rules our ego. It rules our identity. It kind of rules who we are. Yeah. And then we have the second house and the second sign, which is Taurus, ruled by Venus. That has to do with our possessions, what we value, money, morals, that kind of thing. Right. And so we go to the third sign, which is Gemini, ruled by Mercury. And Gemini rules the mind, well, it rules communication. It also rules the mind, but that's more Virgo. We'll get there in a second. The third house also has to do with siblings, neighbors, and that kind of thing. And I always used to wonder, what association does that? Why is siblings in that house? Well, it's because when we're younger, we learn how to communicate through our brothers and cousins and that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have the fourth sign, which is Cancer. That rules our childhood. It also, to some astrologers, it rules the father, and the 10th house rules the mom. But for me, it does rule the father, but some people take it as the mom. But again, this Cancer ruled by the moon. And of course, the moon is associated with nurturing. It's associated with our mom and how we grew up. And it's also like our ancestry and that kind of thing. So the fourth house is really basically where we come from, Then we have the fifth house, which is the natural house of Leo, ruled by the sun. The fifth house rules romance. It also rules fun, games. It rules kids. It's the natural ruler of what we create, our legacy. And that's why it rules kids. People create kids,
Mm.
And our sixth house is ruled by Virgo, ruled by Mercury. It's the sign of Virgo, ruled by Mercury. So the difference between the third house and the sixth house, they're both ruled by Mercury. All right. So like I said, in the third house, Gemini rules communication. The sixth house actually rules the analysis of the mind. It's kind of how we think. All right. So the sixth house also is about our daily routine. It also rules small pets, and it also rules our health. All right. And then we also have the seventh house ruled by Venus, rules love, relationships, partnerships, that kind of thing. And of course, Venus, when it rules Taurus, because Venus rules 2 signs in the zodiac, it has to do with what we possess, or money and material things. Whereas in the seventh house, it has to do with love and relationships. partnerships, marriage, and that kind of thing. And then we also have the eighth house, which is the house of Scorpio, is what we call other people's money. It also rules all things taboo, like astrology and the tarot.
Right.
So, and then we have the ninth house, which is Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. That rules philosophy, it rules law. It also rules publishing and all of those type things. And that's Jupiter in the, where am I? 10th house is Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. Capricorn rules our career, which makes sense because, Capricorns are known to work all the time and be more concerned about status and money and that kind of thing. And then we also have the 11th house, which is the natural house of Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. Aquarius has to do with the things being different. Things also rules freedom, rebellion, being outside the box, that kind of thing. And that's ruled by Uranus. The traditional ruler of Aquarius is actually Saturn. And the 12th house finally is the natural house of Pisces, ruled by Neptune. And basically, when you go through all the 12 signs, we want to be at the 12th sign, which is kind of a conglomerate of all the signs. And a lot of people don't know. That's why part of the reason why Jesus is a Pisces and not a Capricorn is because we want to evolve to become, because Pisces has, it's about compassion. It's also about forgiveness and all of that stuff. So when we get to that 12th house or what have you, we're supposed to be completely transcended and evolved. Wow, that was a lot. I hope everybody.
Well, that's an amazing explanation. Thank you for that. Yeah, okay. Well, and that explains a lot in terms of me being kind of an enigmatic person. I have a Pisces moon and I have a Leo sun, and they fight, and then and then I have the Sagittarius in Neptune in my first house. So there you go.
Okay. I was trying to look up your stuff real quick, but it'll take me a second to do it. But yes, I am I'm a Leo sun as well, and my moon is in Taurus. So yes, and they're it's a loose square, but they square each other, so it's always kind of chaos for me.
Right. No, I understand. No, and so I guess I'm interested in that dynamic between the houses and the planets. Like, for instance, let's say I have a Pisces. Let's say my South Node is Pisces, which is what it is, and then my moon is also Pisces. But my fourth house is Aries. And so I have kind of like the most masculine and the most feminine in that energy. Do I kind of share both of those characteristics because my moon is in Pisces, but my fourth house is in Aries? If that makes sense. Like, how do those dynamics share each other? Do they share space? Is that kind of in terms of the expression of those characteristics of that house?
I'll have to look at your chart, and I'm pulling it up right now because I'm not quite sure what the question is, but let me just look at this.
Okay.
All right. Now, okay, you were saying your fourth house is ruled by Aries, but your third house is Pisces, right?
I was saying that my moon is in Pisces, which is associated with the fourth house, but my fourth house is in Aries. My moon is in the third house. Yeah. And it's probably because I don't understand astrology in the ways that you do. I'm just curious about how people interpret their charts and how those energies share each other. They share space, if you will. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, you can't really look at it, in my opinion, how they share space. I mean, that's, for whatever reason, you were born with moon in your third house. Your third house is about communication. You're into astrology. I think you're also into creativity with fashion and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Because I'm still trying to kind of sort through what you're asking me, but the bottom line here is that's your third house, okay? Then you got your fourth house. They're separate, but if they make aspect to each other, because your natal Mars is in Libra, which is not making an aspect to your moon.
Right.
You follow?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Well, look, you got 12 houses, and each
Right.
house is represents some part of our daily life, or our life, love, money, or whatever it is. And
Right.
what you're asking me, because your moon is in Pisces, does that have something to do with Mars ruling your fourth house? Not necessarily, you know, because
Yeah.
your moon is in the third. Your Mars, even though Mars rules your fourth house, it's in your 11th house,
Right.
so it doesn't really have any aspect to your moon, which is in Pisces. Now, when we talk about, planets transiting like through your third house and making an aspect to your Mars, that's a different thing. Okay. So let's say we had, well, let's see, we got Moon in Pisces. Your Mars, yes, it's just it's no connection there. Now, your Mars does trine your ascendant. Your ascendant is at 14 degrees Sagittarius. Now, there's a connection there, but your Mars and your Moon, there's just not really a connection to those two.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
So I've shared this a lot with my listeners over the last few shows. This is the fourth program of the I Bring Water show, and just in general, in terms of astrological ages and moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and so the term that I've come across is called a great year, or like an astrological age that lasts roughly 2,160 years from what I've read, and that this total of these ages will lead to this. They'll move through all of these signs, and it'll total like 25,920 years. And so, right. I guess I'm curious if we're moving from Pisces to Aquarius. Is it kind of is it moving in kind of the opposite direction, like backwards? I mean, I don't know if that's just a general observation in terms of when you think of a calendar year and you think, Aquarius, then Pisces,
right?
Then Aries, but in the astrological ages, it seems opposite, right?
Right. Well, it does. It goes backwards because of the precession of the equinox, which is a real kind of complex thing to explain. The tropic zodiac moves backwards in its position about 1 degree every 72 years. So it's a weird kind of mathematical formula, but because the precession of the equinox, which has to do with the Earth on its axis, the ages go, they go backwards. No, so that's kind of how it goes. Now, as far as us being in the age of Aquarius, I think we're in the age of Aquarius. A lot of astrologers don't think that. Well, some astrologers don't believe that. And then there's a whole crew of astrologers, and I'm one of them, that believe that we entered the age of Aquarius in 2012. You remember the Mayan calendar thing? When they thought
yeah, I talked about it because actually my Kundalini, or my spiritual energy, was starting to rise then, and then I had like a full-blown spiritual awakening in 2013, and like basically I just opened up all my chakras, and so I was like channeling like divine energy. I was illuminated by the Holy Spirit, and so I kind of tie that into that Mayan calendar and this kind of transition into kind of this new age during that time period, because I was specifically experiencing something profound in my life. So yeah, I speak about that. So that I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. Yeah. And some astrologers believe that we aren't there yet. It makes sense to me, mainly because in the past 10 years, because, Aquarius rules high tech. Things have become super high tech just in these past 10 years, more high tech. Going to the moon, self-driving cars, just even phones, when you think about it, in the past 10 years have become a lot more high tech. And not only that, I mean, high tech also spills over into the medical world. Like, look how fast they came up with the vaccine, So I believe that we're already in it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Absolutely. And so there's some themes that are obviously going to play out in terms of that energy, right? Of the Aquarius energy in relationship to how consciousness and the collective and all of the different, aspects of culture and society move forward, then I'm guessing, in terms of that, right?
Right. Well, we're trying to get there, but Aquarius is supposed to be about harmony. everybody being on the same page. But this, especially here in the United States, we're very divided right now. And I think a lot of that also has to do with, the Uranus Saturn square or conjunction, and then the square. No, the Uranus. Okay, here we go. The Jupiter Saturn conjunction that happened in 2021, and then now we've had 3 passes already of the Uranus square Saturn. And that, to me, I mean, because look at what Saturn represents. Saturn represents the conservative people that believe one way. And then Uranus, of course, represents the people that believe in more free thinking and that kind of thing. And the rebels, because they don't want to be told what to do with these vaccines and everything. And of course, and I don't know if you know this, but the United States is having her Pluto return, which is a big, big deal. And this is part of the reason why a lot of things are going on, even the stuff over in Russia, inflation, this whole pandemic thing, it's about Pluto. Well, it started with Pluto and Saturn when they conjunct back in 2020, brought all of this craziness on. So we're still dealing with that,
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand what you mean in terms of the divisiveness and the separation. And I think that as a collective culture, we're going to, as time goes on, we're going to have to, heal a lot of these old wounds and a lot of these different unresolved dynamics, and hopefully come to a place, in the years ahead where there is a much more teamwork and harmony. And it seems like that some of those seeds are popping up in society, and some of those things are growing in terms of all of the different aspects of culture, and all of our differences are starting to become more embraced. And so I definitely see this, the beginnings of a great opportunity for a collective healing, but it certainly feels still very divisive, and there's still a lot of unresolved energy, and there's still a lot of chaos, I think, around the fact that a lot of people do have some very unique interests, and there's a lot of righteousness. And so, yeah, it's a very complex situation. And you're right. I don't think, inflation or whatever, it's like a 40-year high is like, I don't think that's helping either. So,
well, it's not. It's all a part of what Pluto does. I mean, Pluto brings everything to a head, and that's what he does. He transforms, he destructs, and then things are reborn. And originally, a lot of people don't know this. Scorpio was represented by the phoenix, which you rise up out of the rubble. But obviously now, they changed it to the scorpion. So.
Yeah, I have a phoenix tattoo on my back above my neck, so I definitely understand that process of transformation, and it's legitimate,
Right. I was looking at your chart. You have an interesting chart in that most people do have two planets that are exalted, and you do. You have Uranus in Scorpio, and then you also have Jupiter in Cancer. You're real watery, and then of course your moon is in Pisces.
Right.
Yeah. You almost have a grand trine in water, but it's a little bit out of range, So
yeah, well, and I think that's part of why it's really taken me so long to get aligned in terms of my work in the world, because I am just so profoundly, I'm not just empathic, I'm like hyper empathic. So it's really taken me a long time I spent a lot of years like surrendering myself to God, surrendering myself to love, giving myself to be a vessel for this. And then when it opened up, it was actually too much for my body to actually hold. The frequency was just too much energy. And it's taken me a lot of years to really ground that energy so that I could apply myself and be able to focus all of this unique and profound creativity for and understanding for humanity and learn how to apply it in my life. And so, yeah, I agree with you. A lot of that is, it's been a really slow process for me to kind of learn how to, you know what I mean? How to be able to harness all of this water.
Right. Well, I think that, to me, looking at your chart, I think it's a good thing because, Jupiter in Cancer, that's That's it's in your eighth house too. And the eighth house, it is about all things that are quote unquote taboo, like astrology and all of this stuff. So yeah, it makes sense to me that, it's taking you a little bit longer to get it, but you are actually going to get it. It's part of your path, especially with the North Node conjunct your midheaven. Are you aware of that? You know your chart, right?
I know, yeah, I know some of it. I know my North Node is Virgo, and I believe that well, here's the thing, the chart that I'm looking at, and then because you indicated that I had Libra Mars in the 11th house, and I think that maybe this was one of the questions I had for the audience, which is to share where you're actually running charts, because the chart that I have, it indicates that I have Venus, Mars, and Pluto all in the 10th house. So I think that it's different than yours.
I'm sorry. You know what? Your chart is slanted. Was what it was. I was looking at it as the 11th house. No, it is 10th house. I have the same.
Okay.
And you have Jupiter in the 8th, right?
Yeah. I have Jupiter in the 8th house, Cancer, and I have Cancer in that Lilith, dark moon, or whatever that is. I think those are the same thing, maybe, or similar.
Yeah. And you have Neptune on the ascendant, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I was just calling the 10th house the 11th house. My mistake. You see how your midheaven is kind of slanted a little bit?
Yeah, I don't actually have the circular chart, and I actually haven't learned that to be able to read those yet, but I have kind of like the one with all the boxes and everything, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that was my fault for saying that your Mars is in the 11th. It is in the 10th. Your Pluto, your Venus, and Mars are all in the 10th house. Which that's a really interesting combination for your 10th house. And you do have work to do in this lifetime. Especially with all those planets. I mean, you got the ruler there and it's conjunct Mars and it's conjunct Pluto, which, those are the traditional rulers of Scorpio. And that's where your Uranus is. So, yes, you got a lot of work to do in the spiritual realm.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I from what I understand, I'm here to help usher in spirituality into mass consciousness, and so yeah, it sounds pretty heavy, but I actually believe that I've been cultivating the tools for a long time, and then I just need to continue to apply myself and have the courage to continue to put myself out there, right?
Yeah, because I mean, look, the bottom line here is that Mars is making an aspect to your ascendant. So, you gotta be fearless with this. You got everything needed to go where you're supposed to be going. Okay. You really, really do. So you just, you have to do it. And you're also born with a Mercury Sun conjunction. So that also indicates that you're supposed to do this on a level that's very public, or it's going to be part of your legacy, or however you want to put that,
Right.
So you having a podcast and putting the words out there definitely is the way to do this. And I think as time goes on, you're going to get bigger at this, bigger and bigger. Yeah. Right now, transiting Jupiter is making a trine to your Uranus. Let's see. And Uranus is the ruler of your... Okay, it's the ruler of your 3rd house. There it is. Wow. Okay. Even though your moon is in Pisces in the 3rd house, the actual house cusp is ruled by Aquarius.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's why I found it interesting that I'm here to usher in the age of Aquarius with the Pisces moon in the 3rd house of Aquarius, or however that's put. But it's interesting because when I looked up the moon sign, the day that I was born, on a Saturday on August 19th, and it was a full moon in Aquarius just the day before. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Actually, right. That's right. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So it's this is such an interesting topic, and I'm really thankful to have you here on this Sunday to be able to have this conversation and share it. And I feel like, we're going to have, probably more of these in the future, just because, a friend of mine I had met some months back when we were talking about doing some clothing design. She had mentioned that she thought that that astrology was going to be like the religion for the 21st century. And I think in a lot of ways, I think it's going to become that. And I think it's beautiful, you know, that it's something that you're so passionate about and really great at. And you kind of being a voice for that and a teacher for that. I don't know how you feel about that comment or that idea, but I truly feel like people are ready to maybe get out of some of the constraints of traditional religion, and they're looking for more expanded understanding of themselves and others, you know?
Absolutely. And that's all a part of the Age of Aquarius as well, is that, people are looking outside of that religious box, which is the Age of Pisces. I mean, the Age of Pisces was about Jesus. That's why it's baptism and fish and all of that stuff. Now we're out of that age. I believe so anyway. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about astrology is that you can go to church, and I'm not knocking whatever people believe, that's fine. You can go to church, but then to me, astrology is a bigger benefit because it helps you to understand who you are, what makes you tick, and all of that stuff. And when we go to church, that's not really something that we learn. We learn, well, you should do this and don't do that, but do this. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody that goes to church and that kind of thing. That's fine. But we're talking about why people are more people are going back to astrology, because astrology is the original religion. It's what Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are all based on. And people don't know that, but yet they do understand that one verse in the Bible about, you should not go to astrologers or fortune tellers or whatever. And that quote out of the Bible is just taken out of context, because what it's actually saying is that you should not worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. And I don't worship the sun, the moon, and stars no more than a hairdresser worships the comb, the flat iron that they use for work. But people don't look at it that way. They don't understand it from that viewpoint, because over all of these years, man has put his own spin on what astrology should be and what it shouldn't be, through the church, in order to kind of control the masses. There, I said it. Okay.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's the thing is, and I just like you, I respect anybody's path in terms of what's going to support their quality of life, or what's going to help them to develop a deeper relationship with themselves or the God within themselves, and love and truth and compassion and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, unfortunately, we know in this world that there's a lot of mechanisms that have been utilized to control mass population and to control people's energy. And with that said, I mean, ultimately, I feel like the church is inside of you. It's inside of me, and I walk with God every single day, every single moment. And so, for me personally, it's not something that interests me as an individual, but at the same time, and I think it's absolutely necessary for many folks, and it's something that helps lead them deeper in relationship to who they are. And I think that's wonderful.
I agree. And the thing about it is that the church knows what astrology is about. I mean, it's known through the histories. I mean, through history, it knew that you can get your own messages through God from the sky. But if people got their own messages from God, then they're not going to come to church. And if they don't come to church, they're not going to bring their money. And they also they got to also understand that there are consequences to our actions. So, the whole thing of, okay, if you do this, you're going to go to hell or whatever's going to happen. They had to instill that in order to keep some kind of order. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Don't understand that history of it, because the Vatican there's nowhere else in the entire world that has a bigger body of information on astrology than the Vatican. And that is because the history of the church. All of this is created through and with astrology, just like there's just so many things I could bring up, and I'll be here all day, but the 40 days and 40 nights, the 7 days of the week, all of that is based on astrology, because Venus is in retrograde for 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah. The 7 days of the week, or the number 7 that's in the Bible, that is because of the 7 original planets.
That's it.
So
That's interesting. And, I wanted to ask you something, and I don't know if you
yeah.
researched this, but are you familiar with numerology, and is that something that interests you or plays a part in how you look at astrology or you look at like reality? You know what I mean?
No, I don't bring those together. I know a little bit about numerology. It's not my forte. No.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
No, it's really interesting though. I wanted to ask you something because I don't know if you were talking about, maybe it was on this show, or the natal chart of you saying the United States had a Pluto return. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, I recently did like a full rebrand, like this last summer, like June 11th. I ended up getting a kind of aligned with the tagline that I was going to use for the Michael Mason brand. And so I rebranded myself, rather than I had a clothing brand that had a name, Lip Urban Apparel, which was based on, me embodying the virtues of love, inspiration, and patience. And then I started the clothing brand. And so anyway, I recently realized that it was time to align all of my work into this, my brand, my name, my brand, so that, when I do the podcast, which I'm doing now, and I eventually get back into making clothes, that it's all just the Michael Mason brand. But my question or my point is, there's an individual chart now for that day that I rebranded myself. And when I looked up that chart, I was like, holy moly, it's just so perfect for the work that I'm here to do in the world. But I guess more than anything, just from being interested in astrology and being extremely novice, but being able to look at my actual chart, my birth chart versus the chart of my rebrand, it's unique that it, I guess, and the fact that people have individual charts, but then there's a collective chart, right? There's a chart for the United States. There, you can pull up a chart for anything. It's like an energy imprint on the world, if you will, or on an idea. And is that kind of there's a relationship between, say, my birth chart, and my brand new brand chart in the world, the work that I'm here to do in the world, if that makes sense. I guess it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. That does make sense. Every single thing has a birth chart. Even your couch in your living room has a birth chart. I mean, we could figure out the day it was made and all that stuff. We'd be able to say, oh, well, you may have this chart for such and such years. It may be real doable, but everything has a birth chart. And I have a lot of people that contact me. They want to rebrand. They want to start businesses. So what they want to do is to give that business a great birth. You know. Did you just choose that day, or did you do the astrology beforehand, or it just happened?
No, yeah, it just flowed in terms of the idea that got planted in my brain from a friend, that it was time for me to maybe look at bringing it all together, so that I had a brand, a clothing brand that was my name. And so then I just, over the next 2 or 3 days, I was just allowing my creativity space to just find the right brand,
Mm-hmm.
the right tagline. And then I would look up on Instagram, Twitter, and I'd look up on available URLs. And so I did all of these searches, and then it was just at work that morning, or I guess that afternoon, June 11th, at noon, that I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
bam, it's I bring water is the tagline for the Michael Mason brand. And so, no, it was just organic.
Wow, it happens that way. The thing about that, I feel like, I mean, I don't obviously don't know for sure. I feel like Amazon, Jeff Bezos used astrology to start the day he started on Amazon, because that chart is so perfect for literally growing and overtaking. I think it's Sun, Jupiter. I can't remember what the aspects were,
Yeah.
but basically, it just looks like that chart was set to make a big
Impact.
impact on the world. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that you really do need to go back to this fashion thing. I mean, you're Libra, ruling the 10th house, and Libra has an association with fashion. Okay. 10th house is your career. You have the ruler there, and the ruler of Venus is conjunct by Mars and Pluto. So even though I think the spiritual stuff is great and it's wonderful and you're going to do well in that, you still have that other part too. And I guess what you're trying to do is bring them together, right? So
Yeah, exactly. I'm utilizing the podcast as a means of connecting with people and doing that humanitarian work and that transformational and that personal development and that relationship work, right? And getting myself out there so that when there is an audience there, then obviously my greatest passion. I mean, I love creating clothing and I love creating inspirational clothing that just really empowers people. And I mean, if there's anything that I want to do, it's just create clothing. I mean, I love it, you know? I
Right,
mean,
right. Well, it
yeah,
makes sense to me because all of those planets in your 10th house are, it's making a good aspect to your ascendant, which is Sagittarius. And Sagittarius also it has an association with fashion.
mm,
So, you have all of those key elements in there,
yeah.
because Sagittarius is kind of has to do more with the trends, So, yeah.
Got it. Got it. So I just thought it was really interesting. So I was just curious, like, so, people could have kind of that little thought in their mind, like, that how cool that is to, like you said, when you're creating a new business for yourself as an entrepreneur or as a this or that when you give birth to something in the world that, it's imprinted with this certain cloak or characteristic. And I always try to explain astrology to people. It's like before your soul comes in, you know what I mean? There's certain things that you want to achieve in this life. And so you kind of make these agreements with your parents and with the parents that have specific dynamics that are going to help you with that growth. And so like when you're birthed into the world, you have this like energy cloak. You basically put on this little, it's like you're going onto the stage to play a part. And so the astrology like provides you with kind of almost like this energy cloak or this like for the character that you're here to play as an individual.
That's a really interesting analogy. I like that. Yeah. That's true. I mean, and also I tell people that astrology isn't magic. It literally, I mean, it came about because man needed to measure time. But then they also discovered that, oh, well, when these certain things happen in the sky, we can see it here. So, it's based on the observing and then correlating with what's going on here. And I think that's people also need to understand that, because I don't like when people say, oh, well, this is happening, so this is what made me do it. No, the planets didn't make us do it. We're always going to have free will,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
only mirrors what happens.
Yeah, it's almost like a group of energetic characteristics that we kind of work through, but they don't define who we are. It's like I have a note for the show which says, how birth time affects relationships with soul energy. And so it's basically like what am I looking at here? Oh, okay. So if you have two people with the same exact birth chart, they will be two totally different people because their soul development and their soul history and their self-awareness is unique. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you have two people born at the same exact time in the same hospital, in the same whatever, same city, same whatever. Let's say they have the exact same birth chart. And so they're working through a specific energetic cloak or an imprint from the universe, but depending upon their soul development, their soul history, and who they are as a spirit, if you will, they're going to, even though they're going to have some similarities, they're unique and individual in the ways that they're going to experience life and approach the world. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of at least the way I see it is like, you know what I mean? Like you said, we have free will and there's something inside of us that transcends astrology, but in a sense, because the physical universe was put here so that we could experience ourselves, so that we could collect experience, so that we could evolve. Astrology is kind of like that necessary element for individuality. It's the tools that we use in order to experience individuality.
Right. Well, I think, every soul has its own destiny, its own purpose, their own lessons to learn. I've actually never even heard of anybody being born at the exact time, even with twins. It's usually minutes apart. And of course, their charts are, they're similar, but those minutes, being born in that second or that minute that they were, it's totally going to manifest differently than his twin brother or what have you. And I've worked with twins before, and sometimes what I've noticed is that they come in with the same potential. And sometimes one of the twins will just take over that potential and go really, really far, with it. Whereas the other one just doesn't really get there. Or sometimes they both, generally are very successful in different things that they do. But it's a really interesting thing, working with twins. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And so I just bring that up because, it's like this, let's say, for instance, the spirit of Jesus came into this body, into his body, and he had a specific purpose in the world. Well, he was an evolved soul per se. He was already evolved. But you have other spirits who, and I don't know what your beliefs are in terms of, let's say, reincarnation, but, we've got 7 or 8 billion people on this planet. And a lot of those are very, very young beings that have not had a lot of incarnation here. They do not have a lot of experience on the earth. And so they're very naive because they don't have the experiences to be able to put perspective into. And even though, the way that the world works, at least in my estimation, there's a reason why we don't remember past lives. It's so we can focus on this life and focus on the lessons. And the reality is, mental health is hard enough as it is just remembering this life. So let alone imagine remembering 50 or 100 lives and all of the trauma and all that kind of great stuff. So, I guess my point is just to kind of communicate at least where I was coming from with that question, which is, I feel like astrology, it is kind of that template or blueprint for experience, but the soul's self-awareness or its personal development, it has the greatest impact, in my opinion, because the more evolved the soul is, the more it has the capacity to adapt to environment, to circumstance. You know what I mean? And it has more integrative capacity, if you will, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the astrology definitely is that blueprint, and that's the whole point of it. Really, is to help us and guide us through whatever these lessons are, or at least give us a heads up as to what it is and what kind of choices we can make with whatever conditions we're having to deal with, or whatever, quote unquote, whatever the cards we were dealt, so to speak.
Right. I understand. Yeah. Hey, I had a question for you on nodes, like north and south nodes. And this was just something intuitive for me the last year or two. It's like when I come across, and I know you're really interested in pop culture, and I know a lot of your posts and a lot of the things that you do is around popular culture. And I think that's, you and I really align that way and in terms of some of our interests. And but I guess I lost a train of thought. Oh, so when I look up like famous people or things like that, or musicians, people I'm interested in, or even serial killers, whatever I'm watching. If I'm watching something on TV and I get interested in a particular person or a situation, a lot of times I'll look up. I have a quick reference for nodes, because I feel like these nodes, there's kind of like a template for that, because, like, for instance, my notes or wherever I got my chart from indicates that we've just moved into a South Node Scorpio on January 18th, and we're going to be, it's South Node Scorpio, North Node Taurus, and we're going to be in that until July 18th, 2023. And so I'm just curious what nodes are, if you could share that, and how it plays a part in kind of that collective experience, if they do in fact we go through that period of like a year and a half on. So I'm just curious about nodes.
Well, first of all, nodes, a lot of people may think that they're planets, and they're not. They're actually like a mathematical point in the chart, and it has to do with the moon and the sun crossing paths and all that sciencey part of it. Mm-hmm. But the nodes are about our destiny. The North Node is considered to be where we're headed. Okay, and I noticed that your North Node is conjunct your midheaven. So where you're headed is to something about, your mark in life, your career, right? And the South Node obviously is going to be exactly opposite that. It's kind of the lessons that we have learned, So let me see. So that makes sense then. If your North Node is this conjunct your midheaven, so the South Node is conjunct your fourth. Okay, you know what? This in another lifetime, I bet. Of course, I'm not a past life person, or I can't do past life readings or whatever. But I bet that you definitely were very spiritual at that point too. But this time, in this lifetime, you're bringing that spirituality to like the public, and you're spreading it. It being your South Node being conjunct to your fourth house cusp. Yeah, you probably were that warlock, quote unquote, uh, that would do stuff for people, help people, heal people in the in the private. But now, what you're going to be doing is doing it very publicly. Because again, the North Node is about where we're headed, where we're destined to go, and because it's conjunct your midheaven rules our mark in life, what people know us for. Yeah, you're bringing your spirituality or the stuff that you're working on to the public. That's part of your path in this lifetime, a big part of your path, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
And you were saying that, yeah, we have the nodes are now in Scorpio, or North Node is in Taurus,
right?
South Node is in Scorpio. So yeah, we're going to be working with those themes for the next couple of years. That's going to be interesting too, because Uranus is in Taurus. And I've been telling people that, a lot of this, we've been hearing on the news about this, a lot of these rains and these earthquakes in all these different countries. That's Uranus, because Uranus doesn't really like being in that earth sign. So it can be a little bit destructive, So with the nodes being there, there are probably going to be some things that are going to happen that are going to be out of our control. Not necessarily bad, that are just destined to happen. You know what I mean? And I think that the North Node being in Taurus also is going to have something to do with the economy. It's also going to have something to do with this crypto stuff. And the Bitcoin stuff, I don't know about a lot of that stuff. I do know at some point it is going to be the thing. It's kind of like AOL. You remember? I don't know if you remember. Yeah, you should remember when AOL first started.
Yeah, the whole dial-up thing, and I'm old enough to remember AOL and the whole dial-up, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I think that the whole Bitcoin and crypto stuff is at that stage. I think with the North Node being in Taurus, that's going to crank it up a bit, get it going a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I pay attention to that a little bit. I probably wish I had enough money to be able to invest a lot more at this point. But I think it's certainly something for people to look at if they've got spare change, because there's some potential. Like you said, there's a tremendous potential that, you can see. I mean, you look at Bitcoin, right? I mean, you see memes and stuff about, guy, when Bitcoin had started, he bought a pizza or whatever with a Bitcoin, and now, Bitcoin went up to like $60-something thousand for one. And, it's probably down to the 30s or 40s right now, but yeah, I mean, absolutely. And then, so there's like Ethereum, which is the main coin, or I'm not sure if there's a term for that, currency that's kind of used around a lot of digital art and things like that right now, and it's in the $3,000 range, and so yeah, there's a lot going on there, but beyond that, you're right, and so yeah, and I definitely agree with you on the past life thing. I actually had like a channeled reading with a spirit. The lady by the name of Summer Bacon in 2010, but 3 years before my awakening, and she channels this spirit named Dr. Peebles. And in fact, I got a big story about Summer and Dr. Peebles, and I'm probably going to have her on my podcast here this season. But my point is, during this like 45-minute reading that he spoke to me through her. He talked about the fact that, I had only been here a handful of lifetimes, and that I came from the Pleiadian star system. And he said one of the things that I've come back again and again, because I was heartbroken because all the relationships that I've got into, people didn't have the same level of commitment that I did. And so I came back again and again to try to finally find, that love connection that I had sought, but that ultimately this was my lifetime to walk the shoes of Christ and to help bring something to the masses that's not yet mainstream. And he said, one of the things he said was that I had been a Freemason in my past life, and I had studied the cryptograms and things like that. So, but what you're saying is, yeah, in my past lives, you're right. I mean, the times that I have been here, and I'm not super familiar with Earth. And so that's why it's kind of like one of those things where I bring in a lot of information that's unique and different. But I'm just kind of learning how this world works, like physically, and how I could like uh, gain the resources to be able to get myself out in the world. And I think that's part of the reason why it's a little bit slow for me to find my way around, is because I don't have as much. I feel like some of the people who are really successful in the world, it's karmic related, but it's also one of those things where they understand that they've been here, they've been around the block a few more times on Earth, and so they understand how to they're nestled into some of the resources and connections in order to facilitate their agenda and their work in the world, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, it's just a little tidbit, but a little backstory. But you're right. I think that I have been very much undercover, and that's part of. I don't know if that relates to my moon. I think it's like squared my Sagittarius Neptune in my first house, and I don't know if that's part of the reason why I have this struggle sometimes with like sharing myself. I don't know. It feels like it feels
definitely be a part of it. Definitely, moon square Neptune. Because the moon is our emotions. It's also our subconscious. And Neptune has to do with, it's spiritual, but it also has to do with things being a little bit foggy and not being clear. And a square would definitely indicate that, yeah, that's something that in this lifetime you're supposed to work through. When did you have this this awakening? When was that again?
It was started early 2013, and my energy started raising, around March 2013. Well, I was getting animated late 2012. Like, I almost felt like I was on an acid trip a little bit. I was a little bit more animated, but it really opened up around like March, April, and literally my mom saw light shooting out of my head, and my sister saw light shooting out of my hands. By summertime, I was completely illuminated, and all of my chakras, the energy centers had opened up, and I was channeling like divinity, if you will. It was a lot.
Right. And that was March of
well, yeah, I met what was called the generic term for twin flame around March of 2013. She started working at my job, and that connection kind of opened up some vulnerability in me, and it just I became more and more from March, April, May, and then June 29, 2013. I left my marriage. It was 12 years, and I was completely dropped into the ocean of consciousness by like June, July. Yeah, it was August. It was really intense. I was going through visions, and you can almost hear it in my voice, like crying, because that's how intense. I spent many years where I didn't experience time normally, and it really traumatized me and overwhelmed me. It was very difficult.
Oh, well, Neptune was in your third house during that transcendence.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah, it was. It wasn't quite on your moon yet. I mean, June of 2013, Neptune was at six Pisces. So, yeah, it was in your third house. That was going on. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, that makes sense, because it was otherworldly, my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Also, you say you left the marriage in June of 2013?
Yeah, June 29th of 2013, I left. I was in that relationship for 16 years, and I left. Yeah.
Yeah. So Saturn was almost conjunct your Uranus. So, we say about when Saturn conjuncts a square, Saturn is ridding us of things that just no longer serve us.
Right. Yeah. And that was so difficult, because you're absolutely right. Because I mean, I had built this like beautiful life. I mean, me and my ex-wife, we grew up really rough, and didn't have a lot of stability in our households, and we worked really hard, and we had this like amazing custom house next to one of the nicest parks in Stockton, and we both had good jobs, and she's beautiful woman, and really really kind and smart, and beautiful kids, and so like the whole world didn't understand that I that I had to love myself enough, and that I had to take this I had to take this walk. And I knew deep in my soul that we had kind of fulfilled the learning and the growth that the agreement, if you will, on a spiritual level, but nobody could really see what I understood. And so it was certainly me, facing my cross in terms of, what the world and what society said was right and appropriate. I had to face that. I had to face that, my own judgment, my own self-judgment.
Right. Well, no, I get it, because at that time also Pluto, transiting Pluto, which rules your Uranus, was actually sextile your Uranus. So that's really interesting, because that's a transformation. That's Pluto. And then when we look at Uranus, we think about freedom. So you were breaking free of something that you felt like wasn't doing you what it needed to do for you.
Right.
So it all makes sense.
Isn't that amazing? That's so amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
That's awesome.
And then I'm always looking at stuff. I was looking also at the fact that, let's see, your North Node was in a transiting Jupiter, was square your North Node. So again, that's, whenever we got the nodes involved, that's something, pretty big in life that's going on. And Jupiter is a benefic planet, but if it's in a square, it's making whatever you're going through, it makes it that much bigger. So the spiritual thing that you were going through, Jupiter was there and putting his 2 cents into it too. Right. Because that's, remember, the North Node is part of where you headed. And apparently leaving that situation has put you further and further on that track of where you headed. So.
All right.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in terms of for the audience, what are some of the resources that you utilize in terms of when you were, learning about astrology, or when you look up charts now? Are there some plugs or some places that, you would recommend for people if they were interested in astrology, if they wanted to kind of look up things for themselves?
Well, I went to an astrology school here in Los Angeles for 8 years.
Wow.
And that's where I studied it. There are several books. My favorite book, and people always ask, what is The Complete Astrologer? And complete is spelled COMPLEAT, astrologer. It's easy to read, it's easy to understand. And when I used to come across stuff that I didn't have a full understanding, that was my go-to. To me, that's kind of my Bible. That I go, but I have other books in here, but that's my main book.
Nice. Awesome.
That I like. Yeah.
Awesome.
And there are a lot of online classes that people can enroll. I think for me, going to that school to classes really helped me a lot. Because I'm not that self-motivated. So if I'm in there and they're showing me, okay, this, and then I go and study, then it's better than me just trying to do it on my own. That worked for me. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could tell you in terms of, I don't know your chart, but we're both Leos. And so I know I enjoy the Leo life myself,
Right.
You know what I mean? We know how to work, and we know how to put the work in, but we know how to relax too.
Right. Yeah, you're actually my Neptune is conjunct your Uranus to the exact degree. And our suns are in a loose conjunction. Mm-hmm. Your sun Mercury is in a loose conjunction to my natal sun. So yeah, that's interesting. And my Neptune is in your 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of associations and groups. And guess what? I am an associate, or I am in a group and associate of this group of spirituality. So that's interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So just to close out the program, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share with the audience your talk radio show, your social handles, website, services, whatever it is that would best allow the folks who get an opportunity to listen to this and are just blown away by our conversation and by your knowledge to connect with you.
Sure. You can go to my site at psychicwayne1.com and psychicwayne1.com. And I need to share this. I don't like being called psychic. That's a name that stayed with me from 15 years ago when I first started doing radio. Mm-hmm. And we got on the air and the guy called me Psychic Wayne and it just stuck. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. But I just thought I'd share that. But that's psychicwayne1.com. Also, you can follow me on Facebook. You can get your daily, weekly, monthly horoscope there, Psychic Wayne. And I'll just go ahead and give the handle out. If you're familiar with Michael, my Instagram is at Bruce_Wayne11. So that's Bruce_Wayne11.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll put that obviously on the information on this podcast so that people can connect with you and stuff. But but you have services on your website, right? There's certain services that you provide for folks.
Absolutely. Yes. You can get natal charts, tarot, all of that there. Just go to psychicwayne1.com and, see what fits your needs there.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate this conversation and for you taking the time to sit down with me and share all of this. And I really hope we can do it again.
Oh, absolutely. This was fun. I would love to do it again. So sure.
Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed this conversation between me and Wayne. It actually turned out to be, more magnificent than I realized, and there was really some deep insights in terms of myself and my work in the world, and it was a very, very enjoyable, very unique conversation. Hopefully, I can do it again with him. And so, moving forward, there's a couple things that I'm working on. I'm planning on likely doing a 2-part podcast episode for my, revolving around my twin flame awakening and my transformative experiences and that unique relationship dynamic. Now I have to say that there is some hesitation because I realize that these shows, I have so much information, so I'm thinking it's likely going to be 2 shows rather than 1, but there's so much vulnerability around this and so much rawness still, even after almost 9 years. And so it's going to be, for me to really unpack the layers that are involved in this this unique relationship, this unique healing process that her and I have experienced. It's really going to take a lot for me, but I'm actually looking forward to getting it off my chest, and so that's something that you guys have to look forward to. It's I am kind of a romantic at heart, and certainly you're gonna that's gonna be on full display, and then, of course, with Summer Bacon, which I mentioned briefly here in this show, and you see part of my reading from 2010 I use in my intro music, and it was also in the pre-intro for this show. And I'll close out this show with a little more from my part of my reading, where before I had my awakening, there were some insights that Dr. Peebles had given me about who I am here to become in the world in terms of my work and my message, and so I look forward to having Summer on my show. Hopefully, we've been in correspondence here recently through email, and she said that she's going through some transitions and she's certainly open to doing it later on this year. So I'd really like to have her on, and in the meantime, I'll certainly share more of my my channeled session with her and Dr. Peebles over different shows when I think it's appropriate to share. And a little bit of the backstory about that is I came across a book probably in 2009 because I would always love to go to Barnes and Nobles and like on the weekends or whenever I was off and get some iced coffee and go through their books and see if I can find a book. And I always found over the years that I was always kind of guided to or led to, kind of what my next reading material would be. And I mean, by all means, if I spent 20 or 25 bucks and I started reading it and, it didn't have the information that I felt that would really truly help me with, refining my consciousness or moving me forward on my path, I'd put it down on, and so be it if I didn't, read the book. Even though I spent the money, it'd just go in the closet with the rest of the books. But I came across this book called To Dance with Angels by Dawn and Linda Pendleton. I think that's their name. And a married couple. And so they had come across this channel by the name of Thomas Jacobson. And he was channeling this spirit by the name of Dr. Peebles, who had supposedly in his last lifetime lived 100 years from 1800 to 1900. And he was like a Civil War. He was like a doctor, a homeopath, and I think he had a lot of different roles in his 100 years on this planet. And so I guess when Dr. Peebles transitioned in 1900 or around that time, he decided at some point in his path that he wanted to connect with beings on the planet who were open channels, and so that he could speak to humanity through human beings. And so I was profoundly intrigued by this whole story, this whole dynamic after reading that book, To Dance with Angels. And I decided, all right, I want to get a channeled reading by this Dr. Peebles. And so I looked on the internet, and I came across two ladies who had supposedly, been channeling Dr. Peebles, because he was no longer being channeled by Thomas Jacobson. And between the two websites, there was just something that really drew me to Summer Bacon. And so, obviously I made an appointment with her, and I think it was a couple $100 or something very reasonable to have this recorded session with Dr. Peebles. And so, I use a lot of it because it was a very profound. I received very profound insights in my life, and even though I wasn't able to fully grasp a lot of the things that he said at the time. 2 or 3 years later, when my Kundalini started opening, I had this like full blown awakening, like the universe like awakened, like God consciousness awakened inside of me. Like I was like, holy shit, like he was like spot on, so, and that's the thing about, reading information from human beings, and actually having a conversation with spirit on the other side. And the dynamic around that is that, in order to be really a true channel for spirit, you have to do a tremendous amount of personal development so that you can clear your biases and clear your grudges and learn how to be, have a deeper and profound relationship with God and with love. And Summer obviously is that type of human being, a very rare, beautiful human being. And so Dr. Peebles also mentioned that was something that I may do in my future work on this planet if I actually applied myself. So, whether or not that ever comes to be, I'm not really sure. But anyway, I'm carrying on. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really look forward to continuing my work with you guys and connecting with you guys. And until next time, stay thirsty for life. I love you so much.